Hello, I'm Kevin Benedict, Senior Analyst for Digital Transformation here at Cognizant, and I want to thank you for joining us here today. And I am very excited to have as my guest today Mark Kirsten from Motorola Solutions. He's the Senior Director of Enterprise Software for Mobile Computing. Mark, thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me, Kevin. I'm really excited to be here. Enjoying this great...
Where are you calling from?
Well, I'm calling from Seattle, actually the east side of Seattle, just a few miles away from the Microsoft campus, and enjoying this crazy Hawaiian-like weather. 88 degrees every day for almost a couple weeks now, and not a cloud in sight. This rumor of Seattle being a rainy spot, I think, is a little too widespread sometimes.
Oh man, you know, I'm in Boise, Idaho now, where it's going to be 100 degrees or so here in Boise. But I moved from Issaquah, Washington, right at the base of Tiger Mountain 15 years ago. So not too far from where you're located.
Not at all, not at all. Just a few miles away. I'm probably maybe 10 miles north of that. That's about it.
All right. Well, Mark, again, thanks for joining us today. As this is part of our mobile expert interview series, the first question I need to ask is, what makes you a mobile expert?
Well, I'm glad you asked. Sometimes my wife asks me that question every day as well. But so, you know, to start out with it, I got a degree in computer science from Cal Poly. Moved up to the Bay Area after that and really got swallowed up into the whole .com era. Went right into enterprise software, developing, designing some of the first generation CRM software, precursors to the SAP days, so to speak, the early Siebel days, if you will. Built a ton of enterprise software solutions and systems around that. And then roughly about 14 years ago is when I decided to take the big jump into enterprise and decide, what if we took enterprise software down to mobility? And from there on, you know, with the introductions of the Palm Pilot, early days of Pocket PC, was developing some of the first enterprise mobile software there. Helped found a company called Dextera, which was one of the early vendors in the mobile enterprise application space. Half a dozen patents under my name regarding mobile data synchronization and enterprise architecture for applications on the mobile side.
Wow.
So I've been doing it for a while. I don't know if that quite qualifies me as an expert in other people's minds, but you know, I like to consider myself one.
I think you have the patents and the experience and the years to prove that. So thank you so much for sharing some of your knowledge with us today. Because you have such a history there, let me just ask you, what changes have you really noticed over the past 24 months in the enterprise mobility space?
You know, I think it's kind of interesting. I think maybe some of the changes started to happen probably 4 years ago, which is why I joined Motorola Solutions almost 4 years ago today, is recognizing the fact that the influx of consumerization, right? Mobility back in the day was very blue collar, white collar, not blue collar type of an experience, right? You had your Blackberries, it was all about the email app, it was your Salesforce out. I think mobility now has become very ubiquitous, right? It's become almost a commodity in that sense. And so enterprises years ago really thought of mobility as bleeding edge, cutting edge. Nowadays, it's almost a requirement, right? It's almost a precursor. If you don't start with mobility, you're behind the curve. So I think in the last 24 months, I've seen enterprises really accelerate that adoption, start introducing things like chief mobility officers into their business. Whenever they're looking to build a new solution or a new application, the first decision is, how do I build it for mobile, and then how do I deploy it elsewhere, is really kind of that secondary thought. So I think with that has required a new set of tools, a new set of solutions, a whole new strategy that people need to consider in that regard. So I think it's really accelerated, large in part thanks to consumerization and a lot of the great work that Apple has done as well.
Excellent. Now, for my benefit and the benefit of our audience here, there's a lot of names around Motorola that move around and get in the news. You're with Motorola Solutions. Can you help us understand all the different names that are going around that have Motorola on it, and how you guys are positioned?
Yeah, for sure. I think I answer this question almost every day. It is very confusing, without a doubt. So Motorola, big Motorola, split into two separate companies a little over 3.5 years ago now. Motorola Solutions, which is the government and enterprise side. So government, think of that as the public radios for emergency services, like what your policemen or your firefighters might walk around with the radio on their shoulder. as well as the enterprise rugged device business, which are the devices that your FedEx carrier carries around, the devices you'd see in the hands of someone at a Costco or a Walmart or Best Buy or a Home Depot. Those are rugged mobile computing devices, purpose-built for task workers, very mission critical. Your business depends on them. Motorola Mobility, the consumer side of the business, that made your Droid phones, that was spun out as an independent company and then picked up by Google, acquired by Google, and then more recently has now been sold off to Lenovo. So I'm part of Motorola Solutions, which is still the original Motorola company around government, public safety, and enterprise.
Got it. That really helps. It clarifies a lot in my mind. So thank you for sharing that as well. Let's talk about your solution here. The title, Row Mobile. How did you come up with that name? It's RHOMOBILE. Where'd that name come from?
You know, it's an interesting story. It came up from the founder of Row Mobile, right? Row Mobile was a software company I'll talk about in a bit that Motorola acquired a number of years ago. So it was kind of a bit of a play on words. If you're a developer and you think about developing solutions in a web app world today, Ruby on Rails is a very common, one of the most widely used platforms in the market today for developing web applications. And the thought behind it was, how do I use web skills to build native applications on a mobile device? And what was interesting was the idea was the technology and the technology stack was built around Ruby, very analogous to Ruby on Rails. Well, railroads, rail stations take you to cities, major metropolitan areas, right? But roads, physical roads, deliver you to each and every house. So think of it as everybody's house, a device in your hand versus just getting you to a major metropolitan area. So the technology is built on Ruby. The roads, RHODES. It was a big play on words, Row Mobile. You know, some people get a little too carried away sometimes. I think it's a great name. I love it, and I think the story is kind of fun as well.
Well, you look in the competitive space around enterprise mobility, and you have quite a few interesting names out there. Cognizant, Feed Henry, you name it.
Right, right.
There's a lot of names out there, so hey, no criticism here. What category would you put Road Mobile, the Suite 5.0? Is it MBAS? Is it a mobile application development platform? Is it security? Talk to us. What category would you put yourself in?
Yeah, I mean, I put us directly in kind of the mobile application development, which is the MAD-P, I guess is how you might say that, the Gartner term that they've got out there today. Yeah. You know, which is the merger of the mobile enterprise and the mobile consumer platforms from a development perspective. So we consider ourselves a MAD-P, but more specifically, we really focus on enterprise, right? And I think that's an interesting point because in my mind, one of the things I think that consumerization has done is it's added a lot of new opportunity, but it's also in some ways made enterprise less of a focus, which is a big concern of ours. We think so much effort and focus is going into how do I build an application, the tools and the platforms needed to reach the hundreds of millions, billions of users out there that are buying iPhones, Androids, Windows Phone 8 devices, or any other smartphone OS that you're looking at. Maybe it's Tizen or, you know, Firefox's new OS. As you go down that list, people are really focused on the consumer. And for us, our core focus is enterprise. How do I build an effective next generation cross-platform mobile application for the enterprise?
Yeah, when I think about your market when it comes to the emergency responders, the police departments, and you probably have a military wing and all that as well, I imagine. Sure. All of those have to. I mean, you can't get any more mission critical than those.
No, you can't. I mean, even something like a FedEx, right? People, obviously, what you're talking about is the emergency services. Mission critical there saves lives. FedEx, you know, okay, their job doesn't necessarily save lives. Maybe it does, depending on the packages that they're delivering. But if I've got 130,000 FedEx drivers out there today and that mobile app doesn't work or that mobile device doesn't work, FedEx isn't delivering packages. That's their business model. So we really, you know, and it's kind of interesting. The kind of the core motto for Motorola is, you know, we help people in the moments that matter, regardless of whether it's, emergency services or public safety, or even in the enterprise world, right? How do we support and enable people in the moments that matter?
I like that. I'm writing that down. In the moments that matter.
I did not come up with that, but I sure as heck would love to take credit for that, but unfortunately I can't.
There you go. Well, I think it's an awesome byline there. So, talk to us. There's anybody can build a mobile app today, and they can get it out there, and people can download it, people can use it. It hits a web service on the back end. Everybody thinks it's done. But
Right.
give us just a brief insight in what does it really mean to be enterprise focused. Is it scaling? Is it security? Is it single sign-on? What is it that really makes an application and platform enterprise quality?
Great. I think it's all of the above, the things that you mentioned, but I think one of the big things that I think a lot of people underestimate nowadays is because they assume that connectivity is ubiquitous and that I'm always connected. And in all reality, in truly mission critical enterprise environments, in most cases, you're not connected. And that's a big issue. So for us, first and foremost, it starts with the ability to not just simply build an app and connect to web services in the back end, but to build an app that can run natively on the device, that can operate in a disconnected fashion, where I'm actually synchronizing and bringing that data down locally to the device. So when I'm in the basement and I'm servicing, a generator for the hospital and I don't have wireless connectivity, that I still have information regarding the equipment I'm servicing, the service level agreements, the parts, schematics on how to repair it, whether I'm out in a remote site fixing a power line or doing preventive maintenance testing on a pipeline that's sending oil down it. Who knows where I could be? The end result is connectivity is never given. Building an enterprise app and assuming that connectivity is there, I think, is usually one of the biggest mistakes that people make. That, by definition, doesn't make it mission critical. Now, I've got that data offline. I definitely need to secure it. So you hit it there. Security is key. As a result, then, how do I authenticate? How do I verify? Right? Do I have two-factor or three-factor authentication? What's my level of security there? And then, of course, when I'm talking about that, I'm talking about scales of 130,000 FedEx drivers, 50, 60,000 drivers out there delivering packages, whether it's a Coca-Cola or a Pepsi or a Nestle, whatever brand you want to throw on it, their ability to deliver, service their customers, right? We're talking massive scale now. The ability to handle that data, move it in a scalable way, those are all things that I think about when I think about enterprise. I think the last thing I would add to it is architecture. These are big applications. They're transactional in nature. I'm dealing with data, I'm updating data, I'm manipulating data. As opposed to consumer, I'm usually consuming information, not managing information. And so that results in different architectures. Can you use one platform that solves both problems? Sure, you could, depending on the application you're building, but not always, right? I don't think there's a silver bullet for every solution out there, and I think you need to use the right tool for the right solution.
So I think what the points that you just brought up there, Mark, actually narrow the field of potential vendors to, instead of hundreds or even thousands, to perhaps less than a dozen vendors that can actually nail the requirements that you've defined there. So thank you very much for sharing that. So
yeah.
You guys are mobile application development platform. What do you believe makes you unique if we're looking at those, the dozen players out there that you're competing with? What makes you guys unique and special?
Yeah, so for me, I think that's a really easy answer. We talked about what I think differentiates a consumer versus an enterprise, and when we look at the enterprise space only, and as you mentioned, I think the pool of competition out there, the possible vendors, is much smaller, well under a dozen as opposed to hundreds. In that space, I think there's a couple other things that really uniquely differentiate us. First and foremost, we're the only enterprise platform out there that's free and open source. So we have a core platform, which is Roads at the center of our platform, which is free and open source, covered under the MIT license, and we have Road Studio, which is a development tool you can download. You can build all the enterprise apps you want out of that, and then we have additional value-added capabilities and services on top of that. So the free and open source is the only platform in the enterprise space, and in the enterprise space, you're also used to paying large sums for these platforms, right? You're used to going to the likes of an SAP or an Oracle and buying software and spending millions of dollars on enterprise grade software. And we think that that time has come and gone. That's just not the space anymore. And we think for enterprises and for enterprise solutions to keep pace with consumerization, we need to move more towards that model and assume that there truly is scale there. So, we offer clear and transparent pricing on a per developer basis, annual subscription. It's under a few $1,000s to get started if you choose to or need those value-added enterprise features, some of the additional ones that we offer, like advanced barcode capabilities or RFID integration, as well as like cloud-based hosting of your synchronization versus offline capability. So there's a whole slew of different value-added services there. But when you not only say we're laser focused on enterprises, right, but then you add to that free and open source with value-added features that you can buy into if you want or need to, I think that makes us a huge significant differentiator in the market.
Got it. Thanks for sharing that. So July 29, I believe it was, you guys introduced a new version, the latest version, 5.0. Talk to us about what you're bringing to the table new this year.
Right. So a big focus, I think, as well, is one of the recognitions that enterprises are starting to accept cloud services more. When we're talking about the Fortune 100, the Fortune 500. So a big focus on 5.0 is really doubling down on our cloud presence. So we have cloud synchronization, cloud app management capability. The other one is interesting as well as cloud push capability. This is actually it sounds small and it sounds simple, but for an enterprise, it's super important because today, if I'm using, say, the Google push capability, and I'm in an enterprise and I'm pushing my data through Google Push, then what ends up happening is because of the agreements with Google, I'm making my data available to them. How about providing an enterprise secure way where the data is yours, we're not mining it, we're not analyzing that data, is really a key significant factor of that. As well as new support for new versions of Android and iOS, not to be, unmentioned, as well as things like enterprise printing capability, rugged zebra printers that people might have strapped to their hips if you're going and you're returning a car at Avis. They're scanning and checking you in, and then they're printing out a receipt and handing it to you right there. Those types of solutions are now enabled with, Roll Mobile Suite 5.0.
That's awesome. I want to thank you for sharing that with you. Now let's switch categories of questions to a question about you personally.
Sure.
How many mobile devices, if somebody was to search your house in the evening on a typical evening, how many wireless devices would they find in your house?
Oh my goodness. That may be a bit embarrassing. I think my whole family is getting a massive radiation treatment right now. I would easily say 24. I mean, I think I spoil my kids. I've got two lovely girls, and I can't even begin to tell you the number of mobile devices we have. Easily 24 between Kindles and iPod Touches and iPhones and iPads, and then some Motorola tablets, and I mean I've got like 6 or 7 just sitting on my desk here right now.
So the follow-up question to that is, have you ever found yourself in trouble because of your use of a mobile device at the wrong time?
I think I'm embarrassed to say absolutely, and I think the bad thing is almost on a daily basis. But I've sworn to my wife that I'm working on getting better about it. So my new thing is no phone at dinner. I cannot take the phone out while at dinner, but I still got to work on the other social moments as well that are definitely inappropriate. But dinner is where I'll start right now. So
there you go. Well, thank you for sharing, and I've been there. I understand completely. It's the phone itch. Anytime I stop walking or driving, you have that itch to reach for the phone.
I got to tell you, Kevin, that's the part that worries me. I've been wanting to get a smartwatch, but I think I will just do nothing but regress back to it. Imagine that smartwatch buzzing on my wrist every 4 seconds and looking at it constantly. I think my wife will disown me at that point. So.
Well, there's always the glass, right?
Yeah, there is.
You can just, stare into space when somebody's talking to you.
Yeah, I think I do that enough already as is without the class. So
Mark, I want to thank you so much for joining, for sharing your background, your experiences, and the developments there at Motorola Solutions.
great. Thank you, Kevin. I really appreciate the time and look forward to talking to you again.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.